All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're exploring the absolutely fascinating psychological reasons why good, well-intentioned people can look at the exact same issue and walk away with entirely different moral conclusions.
You know that feeling, right? The sheer pull-your-hair-out frustration of arguing with someone, maybe it's a friend, a coworker, or a relative at dinner, who just doesn't seem to get your viewpoint. You lay out what feels like an airtight, perfectly logical argument, and they just look at you like you're speaking absolute nonsense. It kind of makes you feel like they're either being deliberately stubborn or just plain mean. But today, we are going to break down exactly why that communication breakdown happens. And spoiler alert, it actually has nothing to do with them being a bad person.
So, here is our roadmap for the explainer. We'll start with your moral taste buds. Then, look at harm, fairness, and empathy. Third, we'll cover authority and group loyalty. Fourth, sanctity and personal liberty. And finally, we'll wrap up with the political divide explained.
Okay, moving right into Section 1, your moral taste buds and moral foundations theory.
What is so incredibly cool about this concept is how moral foundations theory essentially acts as our psychological diet. Think about it like this. Just like our physical tongues have receptors for sweet, salty, bitter, sour, and savory, our minds have innate receptors for different moral concerns. Every single one of us has these receptors, but our specific cultures and our individual psychologies prioritize these moral tastes to vastly different degrees. This perfectly explains why we crave different moral outcomes in society. I mean, you wouldn't yell at someone just because they prefer a salty pretzel over a sweet chocolate bar, right? Well, this theory suggests we should probably look at our deepest societal beliefs with that exact same understanding.
Let's move on to Section 2, harm, fairness, and empathy. These are the foundations of care and justice.
So, the very first moral foundation on our tasting menu is care versus harm. On one side, we have this deep, deep compassion that roots all the way back to our evolutionary need for maternal care and protecting vulnerable offspring. And this ancient biological drive is pitted directly against a powerful, visceral aversion to cruelty and inflicting pain. It's literally that immediate pang of empathy you feel in your chest when you see someone trip and fall on the sidewalk, or that sudden urge to protect a helpless animal.
And that ancient maternal instinct? It definitely didn't just stay in the cave. It drives massive modern movements today. Whether someone is out there passionately advocating for social welfare programs, fighting for animal rights, or taking a strict pacifist stance against violence, you are looking directly at the care foundation in action. People who score really high in this specific moral taste bud view the alleviation of suffering as the absolute highest good any society can achieve.
Our second foundation is fairness versus cheating. This one contrasts the drive for justice, equality, and proportionality against a deep hatred for inequality, cheating, and exploitation. It's born from something called reciprocal altruism. Basically, it's the evolutionary realization that cooperating and sharing resources within a group keeps everyone alive, but only if nobody is taking more than their fair share. Nobody likes a freeloader, right?
We see this ancient need for cooperation literally everywhere today. It is exactly why we demand equal opportunity in the workplace. It's why we get so unbelievably furious when we hear about political corruption. And it's why we build these incredibly complex justice systems and fiercely defend the concept of meritocracy. We just want to ensure that people get exactly what they deserve, satisfying that deeply ingrained fairness taste bud.
All right, Section 3, authority and group loyalty, the foundations of order and tribes. This brings us to our third taste bud, authority versus subversion. This contrasts a profound respect for legitimate hierarchy, social order, and traditions against the disruptive, chaotic forces of rebellion. Think back to early human history for a second. Survival required coordinated action, clear leadership, and a really stable social structure. Back then, chaos literally meant danger.
And we can clearly see that ancient need for stable social structures living on today. It translates into huge cultural forces, things like the pride of patriotism, a deep respect for law enforcement and military discipline, and the quiet valuing of traditional institutions and parental authority. For folks with a really strong authority foundation, maintaining the established order isn't about oppression at all. Actually, it's about preserving the very fabric that keeps society from unraveling into dangerous chaos.
Next up, think about loyalty versus betrayal. Here, we're contrasting the pride of group cohesion and self-sacrifice against what this foundation considers the ultimate societal sin: treason, disloyalty, and desertion. This is coalitional psychology at its absolute finest. Historically speaking, if your tribe didn't stick together against outsiders, you simply didn't survive. End of story.
Because of those vital evolutionary advantages of tribalism, this foundation fosters immense solidarity today. It's the whole reason we love sports and feel team spirit. It's the absolute bedrock of nationalism, and it's why we intuitively want to support our local communities. But it's a double-edged sword. This same moral taste bud can also lead to deep suspicion towards outsiders. Interestingly, it also perfectly explains why whistleblowers are often viewed with such extreme hostility by their own organizations. To a highly loyalty-driven mind, breaking ranks is viewed as a dangerous betrayal, completely regardless of the reason behind it.
Okay, Section 4, Sanctity and Personal Liberty, the Foundations of Purity and Autonomy.
Here we contrast the reverence for purity and the sacred against the intense disgust triggered by pollution, profanity, and defilement. This is the Sanctity versus Degradation foundation. Imagine early humans trying to figure out which foods were safe to eat and which were crawling with deadly pathogens. We actually developed a behavioral immune system, a feeling of pure visceral disgust, kind of like finding a hair in your food, just to keep us away from toxins.
Fascinatingly, this behavioral immune system, which was meant to avoid physical toxins, extends right into our moral and spiritual realms. Today, this manifests in a ton of different ways: strict dietary restrictions, concerns about sexual purity, valuing traditional religious practices, and having really strong reactions when sacred symbols are disrespected. But here is a truly surprising fact. It also heavily drives modern environmentalism. Treating the earth as something pure that shouldn't be polluted or degraded is actually a direct, textbook expression of the Sanctity foundation.
Our final core pillar is liberty versus oppression. This foundation heavily champions individual freedom, personal autonomy, and the right to self-determination against the tyranny of coercion, bullying, and domination. It's that deeply ingrained, reflexive resistance you feel when someone tries to unfairly restrict your movement or force you into submission.
Rooted in a natural, evolutionary resistance to bullying, this foundation is the driving force behind modern advocacy for individual rights. It fuels anti-totalitarianism, libertarianism, organized resistance movements, and intense concerns about government overreach. If you have ever felt a sudden surge of anger at an unjust rule boxing you in, yep, that is your liberty taste bud flaring up.
Let's bring this all together in Section 5, the political divide explained. We're mapping the moral palette.
Okay, let's look objectively at the data here. Because when we map these ideologies, a genuinely fascinating pattern emerges. Moral foundations theory posits that liberals tend to rely primarily and most heavily on two specific pillars: the care/harm foundation and the fairness/cheating foundation. Their moral diet is highly specialized toward protecting the vulnerable and ensuring equity. On the flip side, conservatives tend to utilize all six foundations more equally. Their moral diet certainly draws from care and fairness, but it equally weighs authority, loyalty, sanctity, and liberty. And guys, this is the absolute key takeaway. Neither approach is endorsed by the data as objectively better or worse. They are simply entirely different moral diets. And this perfectly explains why political discourse often feels like speaking two completely different languages. If someone is arguing a point using the language of loyalty and sanctity, and the person they are talking to only processes arguments through the lens of care and fairness, they will completely talk past one another. It's literally like trying to explain the beauty of a complex bitter coffee to someone whose taste buds only register sweet sugar. It just doesn't compute.
So what does this all mean for us? Well, the next time you find yourself in a heated debate, getting so frustrated that the other person just doesn't get it, maybe take a step back. Ask yourself, which of the six foundations are they currently using to view the world? Are they trying to protect the sacred? Are they defending fairness? And if you can step out of your own moral palette for just a second and truly understand theirs, how might that change the conversation entirely?